welcome to McGowan's Canvas Miracles. We're here today with John LaRue, and we're in this beautiful center, and we're going to let you tell us about it and all the great stuff that goes on here. And we can start right in this place we're standing right now.
Great. So welcome to the Beaverbrook Art Gallery. We're New Brunswick's official provincial art gallery, one of the most important galleries in Canada. And we say that with truth. We have a great world-class collection of Canadian, international art, and a really strong collection of Atlantic Canadian, New Brunswick art.
Yeah, that's true. And you guys have a special collection on right now, which kind of connects to my heart. So I started art as a kid. I come from Ontario originally. And my school had taken me to see this McMichael collection, which is kind of full circle in this weird kind of way. And you guys have Tom Thompson here, and
from the McMichael, it's their traveling show.
Yeah. And I, as a kid, that's what got me interested in art. I teach lessons around and have this art TV show and stuff like that. So to be able to come here now and see Tom Thompson all these years later and sort of feel like it all was worthwhile. And so the collection, how long is it going to be here for?
Tom Thompson's going to be here until pretty much the end of March. So it's here for another 2 months. Okay. And we have another big traveling show called Radical Stitch, which is traveling across the country, another major show on contemporary Indigenous beadwork. That's here until the beginning of March. And then behind me is our permanent collection, which is always sort of semi-rotating, but it's up all the time, just some gems and really important masterworks of Atlantic Canadian art.
How do you go about getting your collection?
So I sort of helped decide on what was there, but I'm always talking to people like our education department and other curators here just about what makes sense. And there's always just this kind of commonality of what makes sense to have up. And so there's a lot of works in here which are really famous works, which people really want to see, and you want to have some of those up. But there's a lot of new pieces that actually no one has ever seen really before. Some that we just got recently donated to us, some have been in private collections. Some just rarely come out. So there's always something that's new here. Like for example, I'm looking at right here on this side, one of our most recent donations. It's actually a hand-painted hockey stick from Natalie Sapir. She's an Indigenous artist here in New Brunswick. And it was one of the sticks given out at Player of the Game when the World Junior Championships were in Moncton, Halifax. Instead of a little trophy, they gave them each a hand-painted hockey stick by a maritime Indigenous artist. So we got one of the last ones that exists by Natalie, and it's fantastic. So you get Hockey Canada art, Indigenous culture, it's great. I'm looking at some wood-turned bowls by Gordon Dunphy. So it's not just paintings in here, there's sculpture, there's furniture, there's behind me the world's oldest birch bark canoe, the grandfather Gweeton, fine craft, metal sculpture, stone. There's a bit of everything in here.
It started in roughly 1959, I think it was the gallery started, but it's a world-class art center. I mean, we have giant Salvador Dalis and beautiful paintings. Talk about some of the great artworks that draw people in here.
Yeah, you always want to be careful making claims. Quite often people that say they're world-class oftentimes aren't. They're trying to make it go. But in our case, I think it does hold true because we do have some works that are of global importance. The Dali, for example, it's one of his largest paintings and from his major 1950s religious period. And it's one of our most iconic paintings. It's 15 feet tall. Santiago el Grande, it's very, very renowned. We have a work that just came back from a huge retrospective in London by an artist named Lucian Freud. And it may be our most important painting of 20th century with a real global importance. It's considered his first really significant painting. He was one of the most important figurative painters in modern British history. So it caused a sensation when it went to London. It was written about in The Guardian. And these things travel the world. We get asked quite often to send things to go to Japan, France, United States. We've got some really important things here.
As far as programs, I noticed that there's a section where you have a center where people can paint and things like that, and you have nights of the week. Talk about some of those programs.
Sure. We have really an amazing program for kids and adults and youth and everything in between. It's probably one of the best in the country, certainly relative to our size. It's very active, a lot of loyalty to it. People our new audiences are coming in all the time, and people that have been coming here for decades go. And from our education programming department, they also organize artist talks, other events. In fact, there's a play by Theatre New Brunswick that's being performed here in connection with our Tom Thompson exhibition, which we have. So there's always all kinds of eclectic things happening, as well as the constant of art education going to kids that are very, very young. And a lot of professional artists that I know, the successful ones have come out of New Brunswick, have said their initiatives, the real catalyst to help them start has been through Beaverbrook programs. So it's great. So there's the kind of youth art studio that's downstairs. And we just have some great teachers. Yeah, so we work a lot collaboratively with them in exhibitions and making sure that there's works up that can inspire them from some of their activities and vice versa.
How many years have you been working with the gallery now?
I've been here formally as curator for 8 years, but I've been actually working with the gallery for almost 25. I've helped design some of the extensions, some of the galleries that are in here. I've done a lot of architectural work. I've curated some other shows independently starting in 2008, 2010. So I've been involved with the gallery for a long time.
Oh, that's awesome. So through all the years, is there a favorite piece or some special thing that you just, you get to see all this art?
Yeah.
Is there something you've just like, wow, that one just sort of stuck to your heart?
Well, it's funny. I think about that quite often because, that idea, hey, if the place was burning down, what would you grab? Well, you can't grab the Dali. It's too big. You'd die in the fire. But one of my favorite, I say, for a historical piece, there's one, it's called A Passing Storm by Jacques Tissot. It's a Victorian painting by a really well-known French/British painter. And it's always up. It's in our international wing. And it's this beautiful, it's so evocative of just the tension between this couple and the storm, the nature outside, and all kinds of double entendres in it. So that's a great piece. For contemporary pieces, I'm really kind of torn because there's so much. One of the ones that I absolutely love, and you can see it just sticking out here behind me, is The Supper Table by Mary Pratt. It's a still life of her table in the late 1960s with ketchup bottles and a hot dog and half-drunk glasses of milk. And it's an amazing, really significant painting in Canadian art history, and it helped start her career. That was the first painting where Mary Pratt really arrived, and she acknowledged it really started with that painting, and we just got it in our collection very recently.
Do you think that's an orange?
Yeah, so that Mary Pratt painting, we should mention that's a local artist as well. Tell us a little bit about how you acquired that. And
Sure. Well, local, in fact, local in that she was born in Fredericton, but she was arguably the most important Canadian painters in the 20th century, in recent history. And certainly when she passed about 10 years ago, she was the most beloved female Canadian painter in Canada, and just in the National Gallery, international reputation. But she always loved the Beaverbrook Art Gallery because when she was younger, she would come here, bring her kids here. It just really inspired her. So it was important for her to have a presence here.
So did she donate that to the
Well,
gallery,
her family donated it after
Okay.
she passed, and they really wanted it to be here in the Beaverbrook. The idea that Fredericton was always home to her. But it's one of her most iconic works, and she, at the time in the late 1960s, that kind of realist painting, certainly of kind of banal household items and kitchenware and cookware and things like that she became famous for, and food, was absolutely out of style. It was a time of just abstract art, color field painting, and so that was actually quite reactionary. So something that looks fairly sort of safe today was anything but at the time. So she created this whole sort of movement of re-acknowledging, first of all, the beauty of kind of domestic life and light hitting a ketchup bottle and how it looked like the crown jewels to her, and the idea of capturing light and things that seemed everyday, but they're anything but. So it's a wonderful privilege to have that painting.
I don't know if you still have it. It was a program on Thursday nights where they have artists working. Are you going to have that back? Before COVID, they seem to have something going, and you
Sure.
can come in and see people working and doing stuff here.
We have that. It's actually expanded as an artist in residence program. So even right now, next to the art studio downstairs where the kids paint, there's an artist in residence studio, and we have people for a whole month. So there's an artist named Mel Beaulieu, who's an indigenous beadwork artist, who has work in one of our exhibitions now. So she's there for the month doing beadwork, and then every month a new artist comes in, and you can just go in anytime, talk to them, see what they're working on. And it's a great program. So ADA does that from our programming education department.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I've always wondered this. All the times I come to the gallery, I've often seen, so you're talking about that 15-foot painting, Dali, and I'll see people laying on the ground looking at it. Is this a phenomena that started, or is this just, like, where did this come from?
No,
this
it's for a while. Well, so believe it or not, I gave a tour last night of that painting to people, and they were lying down in front. We've been doing it for a while, and the interesting thing, long story short, so when you look at that painting, even though it's huge, you're essentially looking straight on at it, but it was meant, story goes, it was meant to be for a large church or cathedral behind the altar, and usually up quite high. So when you get to those, this devotional idea of you're looking up at something, implying you're looking towards heaven and that sort of thing. So the angle that he painted it for was looking like this. So when you look straight, it's not quite what he intended. And funny enough, it's an amazing painting when you're looking at it normally, but if you're lying on the ground, and you can see all these footprints on the wall where people put their feet, we encourage them to do it, the angle changes and the painting becomes much more three-dimensional. There's things where the saint where a foot comes out. There's things that look flat-ish, looking normally, but all of a sudden there things jut out. So you realize what a genius Dali was. He was painting it knowing that you would, in the church, see it at that angle. So it becomes much more spatial and it changes. It's remarkable. People are blown away by that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are some things that might be coming over the summer to the gallery that you know of that should get people down here?
Yeah, well, I mean, if they can come in the next little bit, the Tom Thompson Radical Stitch exhibitions are 100%. Outstanding. After that, we have a show coming, another one from Michael called River of Dreams. It's Canadian artists painting the St. Lawrence River, late 19th, early 20th century work. It's just this real sense of kind of Canadiana to our, just our neighboring province. And in fact, the canoe will be part of that exhibition. We're going to move it over into that space for a little bit. That's going to be outstanding. There's another contemporary sculptor who lives in Fredericton now. She just moved back from Nova Scotia, named Sarah Maloney. And it's a big mid-career retrospective of hers. Outstanding work. With a lot of dealing with nature and textile art and knitting. And it's an amazing show. So 2 very different exhibitions, but really inspiring at kind of different ends of the spectrum. One a bit more contemporary sculptural, one more painting and traditional, but equally riveting.
So in this canoe, this has always been kind of iconic. Tell us a little bit, how long has the canoe been here and what's the idea behind that?
The canoe behind me, the canoe's been here for, it's been in Beaverbrook for about 15 years. It's been shown out here in its current status for about the last 8 years. When I started, in fact, that was one of the first things I made sure to bring out. It was in storage and it shouldn't have been. It should be just central to people's experiences. It's the first thing you see as soon as you walk into the gallery. It's the world's oldest birch bark canoe. It's called the Grandfather of Gweeton, which means the grandfather canoe, which was recently named by the Wolastoqiyik people. Built in the 1820s by the Wolastoqiyik. So it was made here on the Wolastoq St. John River. And it was given by Governor Howard Douglas at the time to a gentleman who helped. He was a British soldier, helped a lot with the recuperation from the Great Miramichi Fire in the 1820s. And as a thank you, Howard Douglas gave it to him. When he went back to Ireland after serving here in the British military, he took the canoe with him. And it was in his house for a bit, then it somehow ended up in a university in Ireland. It kind of languished there for a bit. And then an anthropologist about 15 years ago noticed it and recognized it as a canoe from this area of Canada. Did some research, found out it was given, so it was sent back to Canada for restoration in Ottawa, and then from people getting wind of that, it ended up here. Long story short, and we show this, and in conjunction with the Wolastoqiyik Nation, they helped us do the language of the descriptions in English, French, and Wolastoqiyik, and it's an amazing piece. I mean, again, some people ask, why is there a canoe in the middle of the art gallery? Well, it makes absolute sense because it's this beautiful piece of design, of inspiration, of craft, of the hand, the head, and the heart coming together. Something that was functional but beautiful. So it's an absolute, real, practical work of art to be treated as something, a work of genius.
Oh, it is.
And it's
beautiful
wonderful
too.
Yeah.
When you write up the pieces and stuff, and there must be a lot of research.
I was the only curator here for about 7 years, and now there's several others, which is good.
Well, you seem very knowledgeable about all that stuff.
Yeah, you get to live with this stuff, but I mean, no, we do the work internally ourselves, but you're committed. I mean, it's fascinating work, and we trained with a background in this, but it's we do a lot of it ourselves. I mean, we're doing. There's a lot of work that's out there.
Right.
So sometimes you borrow the research, but for things in here in the Atlantic Gallery, no, we do this. We've written a lot of books and things internally from the Beaverbrook. We produce a lot of the kind of the knowledge as well that disseminates out there, comes from internally from us as a gallery. And my other colleagues curatorially, like Ray Cronin's doing amazing work. Emma Hassan-Saul-Purley, our curator of Indigenous Arts, doing great work. So we're really fortunate. We're doing great things.
I want to go back a little bit more to the Tom Thompson collection that's here now. So to bring that in must have been a huge expense for the gallery.
It was mammoth expense.
Yeah,
yeah.
Because
it's the most expensive show we've ever brought in.
I think it's probably only going to be a once-in-a-lifetime thing. Mm-hmm. Like, you're not going to get this opportunity to see this again.
No.
And I mean, they have to have a guard in each room, and it's a real special collection. So tell us about the process of getting that, and what it was like for you to actually be able to get it here.
Well, it was an expensive show. At first, I wasn't sure if we were going to get it because of the cost and the effort, but we did through just some further work. But it was a lot to bring it in. A lot of preparation. Ray Cronin is my colleague that really worked on kind of helping coordinate that. I worked on a little bit, But in prepping the spaces and making sure that it fits, because whenever exhibitions travel, rooms are always different in every gallery. So the space was very different from where it was in the show before. In the show before that, so you have to make sure the themes kind of work, because it's not just paintings on the wall. There's different micro themes and rooms and spatial things and so we worked really hard at that. But it's great. People are coming in. Our audience in January so far has been about 4 times what it was the year before.
Oh,
So a lot more people are coming to see it. The same with Radical Stitch. I mean, again, an international show of contemporary Indigenous beadwork, and it blows people away, because some people come for the Thompson, didn't know about this, then they see that show, and they
Well, that's
find
what
it
happened to
remarkable.
me. I came up to look at the Thompsons, walked through some of that work, and I was like, this is incredible. So
Yeah,
if you get a chance to see it.
Totally, and vice versa. Or people come for that, go see the Thompsons, say, this is amazing painting. So yeah, it's just, we try to bring things that are different, you know, that sometimes people may not think they're interested or connected with one thing, and then when they see it or sort of explained, or sometimes there's an adjacency, they'll resonate differently, and it moves them and it changes them, and in a great way. Like even here, when you look at the Atlantic room, this is a very eclectic room. I mean, most of what's up, when you think about Atlantic, or you think of paintings, most of what's in here is not painting. There's photographs, sculpture, fine craft, textile work. You know, there's about 8 different kinds of art practices in this room: wood turning, hockey stick, and it's the kind of thing that people go, wow, it becomes more interesting, more exciting, and more real, a bit less formal. So it's not that we don't want to kind of be the old classic art gallery. So we're that, but I think we've become a lot more interesting and exciting. We figured out how to really connect and inspire the audiences more, and make it matter and speak to them.
So when you're deciding on a piece and bringing something in or getting a new piece, people often wonder, like, you know, what's the decisions behind picking a piece of art? Like, what makes this art great or anher piece great? So how do you go about making those choices?
Just being really familiar with the collection. I mean, I've gone through our whole collection 100 times, just knowing it, and sometimes also deciding, you know, what works go next to each other. There's some adjacency. Like even, for example, you look behind me, you know, the large Alan Silboy mural. Well, next to it is the big pink Bruno Bobak painting from the 60s, early 60s. So the painting's almost 60 years old. We just got it donated from a private collector, and it's never been shown in a gallery. And so the scale, the color makes sense with that. I mean, it's not really forced, but it just works. So things are a conscious choice. It's not just, well, let's just slap them up. And so a lot of things next to each other. Like, you know, why did we pick those 3 Gordon Dunphys together when we have 25 in our collection? You want ones that are different and not uniform, where they kind of talk to each other. They become like small. They become like people. And on this side, there's a bit more wood, you know, the hockey stick and the bowls. This side, there's more metal with the sculptures and the old car hood. You know, you just play things like that.
So roughly how many pieces do you have throughout the gallery?
Well, our whole collection is about 6,000.
6,000.
And a typical, which is a lot. It's not huge, though. I mean, National Gallery they might have 100,000, something like that. The typical rule of thumb is about 5% of a collection is out at one time.
Okay.
So, you know, it's crazy when you think about it that 95% of what we have, you don't see. It's in storage vaults. But, you know, that's why there's a lot to kind of pick from. You can always make it new and exciting.
Yeah. So how often do you switch it out for?
This room was switched. The room before was here for about 2 years.
Okay.
So, and you might switch the odd thing inside once in a while, but this was just a really big refresh. So Canadian Gallery's been up for a little over a year. That'll be switched in a few months. So, you know, it takes the time. Sure. But at the same time, you know, we're always having new temporary exhibitions that come in. So our attention was on those for a while. So now that those are stable, we were able to tackle this.
I want to thank you for talking with us and sharing your expertise, and I want to encourage everybody to come out. Of course, the Tom Thompson collection it's really dear to my heart, and like I say, I think it's a once in a lifetime thing. I don't think it'll ever.
It really is. It's a privilege. It may never. A show like that of Thompson will never come again. If you're a fan of his or Group of Seven or just Canadian painting, you really should come see it. It's amazing.
Oh, for sure. curator of Indigenous art here at Beaverbrook, which is a beautiful gallery. How long have you been doing that work for?
I've been here for 6 years, since 2018.
Okay, and what got you interested in? Are you an artist yourself?
I am. I studied at Mount Allison and I have a Bachelor of Fine Arts, and then I went to Concordia to do my Master's of Art and Art History, but I did that online, and that was more recent. So I've been here 6 years.
So tell me about how you go about selecting art or deciding what you're going to bring in.
Of course. So I approach every exhibition with usually a set theme in mind, not always, but my mandate is to showcase Wabanaki artists. Like, that has been my focus for the past couple of years, since we are in Wolastoqey territory in Wabanaki or the territory. And so I work with artists like Mel, who become friends of mine, and so it's been really, really easy to incorporate more Wabanaki art into not only the gallery for exhibition purposes, but into the collection as well. So we're trying to build up the collection at the same time.
That's incredible. You have a beautiful show on here. We're going to showcase some of those pieces. It's called Radical Stitch. So how did you get involved with that and bringing that to the Beaverbrook?
Radical Stitch opened 3 years ago at the Mackenzie Art Gallery, and it had a beading symposium kind of tied into the exhibition opening, and I really wanted to go, and I missed the deadline to apply because it was right after COVID, so they're being very selective about who could attend the beading symposium, so I ended up missing the opening, but I followed it online very closely, and then I had messaged the curator, Sherry Farrell-Rosette, one of 3 curators actually, Sherry, Kathy, and Michelle. I messaged Sherry on Facebook at like 1 in the morning, I think a year ago, maybe a little over a year ago, and I said, is this coming to the East Coast? And she said, no, we have no venues on the East Coast. And I said, could it potentially come to Fredericton? And then that prompted conversations between us and the Mackenzie Art Gallery. John LaRue, who is the manager of collections, shifted the entire schedule so that we could fit it in this 2.5-month time slot. So we're very lucky. It's the second last stop on its tour. It goes to Indianapolis after this, and then it's all done.
All right, so we were talking about Radical Stitch. Maybe tell our viewers, what is Radical Stitch?
Radical Stitch is the largest showcase of contemporary Indigenous beadwork on Turtle Island. So we're talking both sides of the border, Canada and the US. From a curatorial standpoint, the theme talks about cultural suppression under the Indian Act and influence from Indian residential school system. And as Sherry Farrell-Rosette points out, one of 3 curators, producing culture is an act of resistance and survival because it was outlawed in Canada between 1885 and 1951. And so she argues that producing culture is also this radical example of love, and that kind of ties historically into the ways that Indigenous women, but not exclusively to, would wrap their loved ones in beadwork, and that's how you showed love and how you wanted to protect somebody, is by adorning them in beadwork.
Wow, we've been talking about some of the artwork and Indigenous work in Radical Stitch, and you sort of caught me off guard. I never really thought about how artwork was taken away and an opportunity. Tell us a little bit more about that and how important it is to your community.
Yes, so between 1885 and 1951, producing culture in Canada was considered outlawed, and this was not necessarily a policy within the Indian Act, but it was a free-floating policy that would be enforced by RCMP or the church, for example. And so you were not allowed to produce regalia, wear regalia, so beading would tie into that as well. That was a complete no. And that was an attempt to assimilate Indigenous folks into the Canadian body politic.
Okay, so were they doing it despite that, sort of, and secretively, and putting it into their works and knowing it amongst themselves?
I'm sure there were people still producing cultural items, but I think that would have been suppressed so significantly. And I know that in my community, for example, on this side of the world, there was relatively no culture being exercised until the 70s.
So it's never been in the East Coast before?
No.
So this is brand new, so it's another reason to come and see it.
Absolutely, it's the only
And you actually
venue.
have one of the artists who's done some of the work that's in the program.
That's right.
Here with us. Mel, maybe you could tell us a little bit about some of your work and how you got involved with doing this kind of thing.
Yeah. My name's Mel Bullier. My pronouns are they, them. I'm a member of Metapanagioc First Nation. I do beadwork primarily. And really a lot of my work, found its way into Radical Stitch because when the show exhibits locally, they're allowed to bring local artists in. So Emma reached out and asked if she could bring 2 of my works in, which is always an honor. And like I really trust Emma to like do my work justice, you know. So I'm always happy to be here, happy to have my work included, especially in this exhibit where a lot of, you know, my artistic heroes are here, people I've looked up to and learned from. So that's really exciting.
So who would be one of your artistic heroes?
Jamie Okuma, Elias Not Afraid, yeah.
So tell us a little bit about when you're doing a piece, what's involved, how long does it take?
So with beadwork, your beads are stitched down. A lot of the ways I work is 1 bead at a time, sewn down individually. So the works that are in the exhibit here took me nearly a year each. It's a very slow art form,
So is it
which
a
is part of
drafting
why I
process,
like it.
like where you draw out the piece first and then
Yeah.
decide what you're going to do?
I kind of rough it in very rough. Like some people plan their beadwork very extensively beforehand, but I find I never stick to my plan anyway. So I kind of just block in composition super rough and then work out the details as I go.
Okay, and you're the artist in residence here right now.
Yeah.
So people are able to come down, see you working on
Yeah.
pieces, and
Yeah, I've got some works in progress that people can come see and come in touch because, you know, beadwork's meant to be tactile and interacted with. In a gallery setting, there's so many people coming in that touching it, the oil from your hands can damage it. But as far as like my work down in the residence studio, people are welcome to come and interact in that way.
okay, awesome. And Emma, so over the years, you've been here roughly 6 years, you told me?
Yeah.
And so when you bring in the programs, how would you compare Radical Stitch to some of the other things? Is this one of the finer programs you brought in, or?
I would say that it is. It's kind of the first large exhibition that I've been able to bring into the gallery. I've done like smaller shows in comparison to this one, but something like in Tom Thompson that is downstairs, those would be some of the bigger exhibitions that we're bringing in. So it also, I think it's good to build that relationship with other galleries. So it's been a learning curve for me also. But
Okay, and
we
it's going to
talk-
coincide with the Tom Tom, so it's a great time to get to see both of the
Yes, absolutely.
programs.
And we've been talking a lot about how this is a dream come true for both of us because I love beadwork so much and it's been part of my life since I was a kid. I bead as well.
You had mentioned the bead symposium, Emma, and maybe for viewers that don't know what that is, maybe you could tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it was basically a beading conference that was put on in collaboration with the exhibition opening at the Mackenzie Art Gallery. So they had panels and speakers and workshops, and it went 2 days, 2 or 3 days, I think,
Okay.
in celebration of the exhibition opening.
That's awesome. So how, for artists themselves, being a curator, how do you go about finding art or deciding what kind of art you want to bring in, and tell us about your decision process.
I always tell people that I'm a Facebook curator, which is coincidentally how this exhibition was curated because the 3 curators are in different provinces. So they were curating the entire show via Zoom and they were looking for artists on Instagram and Facebook and just building upon that network of artists that already kind of exists on social media. So it's really been easy to kind of have access to Indigenous artists, which is really nice. Not everybody has social media though. So, I mean, I'm researching, Google search, like everything comes into play.
Are the pieces up online now where people can look at them as well, or
For Radical
after the
Stitch?
show? Yeah, for Radical Stitch.
A lot of the work is online, yes,
Oh,
but
it is?
some
Okay.
some things are not allowed to be photographed, so those
Okay.
things have signs next to them.
Okay, awesome. So you have to come in to see some of them,
Yeah.
some of the bigger pieces. That makes
Absolutely.
sense. I like that idea. So is there a favorite piece or a favorite artist that I know it's hard to pick one, but we all have sort of secretly one that we kind of just touches our heart. Doesn't mean they're better or worse, but one that sort of grabs you when you're going through.
I was saying that I have many favorites in the show, and it's like you said, it's really hard to pick. The nice thing about Radical Stitch is that every time you turn the corner, you're surprised by something, and there are always like show-stopping pieces in the exhibition. I think my favorite would probably, again, it's really hard to pick, the O'Halloran coat replica, because I had done work on that project, so I feel really emotionally connected to that work. I had written an essay that went into the catalog for that work, so I'm
Oh,
really
really?
tied to it. Yeah.
Okay, that's quite something. And Mel, what about you? Doing the work yourself, is there a certain one that you sort of come, other than your own work, of course, obviously, but that when you're walking through, you thought, wow, I really like that, or you got inspired by?
I feel like there are a lot of works that I'm drawn to for different reasons. And especially like as a beader, a lot of the things I'm drawn to are things that either I love to do in my work or that I find like technically really hard to do, or like that inspire me in that way. I love the Sky Vest by Catherine Boyer. It's got a lot of direction changes and texture within it, which is something I really love. You can almost see the clouds moving. And I love the way she uses the color of the moose hide to kind of represent the Saskatchewan horizon. I think that works really beautiful. It's probably my favorite, the one that draws me in the most.
Oh, wow. And how long have you been doing beadwork? How did you get involved in?
I've been beading 8 years, 5 of them as a full-time artist. And I got involved trying to get sober, actually. And somebody had recommended that, you know, beadwork's healing, beadwork's medicine. And it was true, and it just stuck. And it's given me everything in my life.
It's pretty exciting to actually be in the Beaverbrook Gallery in such a fine place like this. It's an incredible place to showcase work.
Yeah.
And how did it get involved that you got to put your work here, and how did that connection happen?
I think a lot of that comes down to like what Emma said, that relationship building. Like beadwork is community before anything else. Okay. Indigenous art is community before anything else. So a lot of that comes down to, you know, that relationship building. And it's always exciting for me to be here. Like I feel a special connection to this gallery. My grandmother was a painter and had a work exhibited here when I was a kid. And I remember coming to the gallery and thinking she was famous and being very proud of her. And one of the works I have in Radical Stitch is a portrait of her. So it feels very like full circle every time I get to.
Oh, in this collection itself, is a portrait of your grandmother. You had a painting here at the Beaverbrook.
Yeah, I beaded a portrait of her. So my mom always says that she'd be really proud that now she's the art. And that always feels special to me when I'm here.
Well, there's a statement if I ever heard. Now she's the art. I kind of like it. Should have called that. Is that the name of the piece?
It's called Matriarchs.
Matriarchs. Wow. I'll be sure to take a look at that, and we'll put that up on film. I'm curious about that one now. It's so much better when you know the story behind art. So when you do a piece of art, is there some kind of story you have in your head or heart that you think, okay, I'm doing this because of this reason, like something that inspires you to do that piece?
Yeah, that's pretty much always the case for me. It's very rare that I start a project and then find the message after. In Radical Stitch, it's very contemporary, and like some of the curators have talked about, you know, that a lot of people think Indigenous art is removed from mainstream pop culture when really we're very embedded. So it's very common that the second a song comes out or the second a TV episode comes out, somebody online is already beating about it and has already posted it. Like people are very quick on the ball to be involved in that kind of stuff, and I find that kind of stuff inspires me a lot. And so usually there's something I'm trying to say before I start.
But my grandmothers inspire my art practice and have always inspired my art practice. They're very, well, one of them is like very politically active.
Okay, so I'm getting the feeling this is sort of a passed down sort of tradition that you guys.
Absolutely, and I mean, that's what the show talks about too, is this network of artists and bead artists. Like in the show you have mother and daughter, you have teacher and student, you have friends in the exhibition, so that network is really prevalent.
Yeah, beadwork is
how far back would you say that this kind of work goes, like originally? Has it been part of your culture forever, or is it just like
since the 1500s at least?
1500s?
Like, I would say like very first like minimal contact, I would think, like in the 1500s. But we've had beads here since, you know, like, for thousands of years, and those were clay, shell, bone.
So what's
copper.
the oldest piece you have in your collection, in the Radical Stitch collection? Is there any older pieces in there?
Well, Radical Stitch is contemporary.
It is
So
contemporary,
it's more modern. New.
but we recently acquired 4 pieces from Waddington's auction house in Toronto, and those are historic examples of Wolastoqey beadwork and a pipe.
Okay, and those are here as well? People will be able to see them when they come
Those are
in?
kind of tucked in the side,
Okay.
down the hallway gallery, down the international wing. Because it's kind of out of context with Radical Stitch, we
Right.
put them in one of the side gallery cases.
Okay, so you can come in and see the newest work and what artists are doing, and then you can go back and see historically where it started and the traditions and passed on. That's incredible. What other kinds of Indigenous work do we have here besides Radical Stitch?
We have the Grandfather Agweeden, the oldest living birch bark canoe in Canada, which is directly behind you.
Yeah, that was incredible.
We have Roger Simon on view, Shirley Bear on view, Alan Syllaboy, Tara Francis, Natalie Sapier, and Ned Bear.
So that's quite a collection of works here for people to come see. That's awesome. And what's your favorite of all the pieces over 6 years? Outside of just walking around this beautiful gallery and the artwork, is there a piece that you come across and each day you think, oh, I just love that piece? There's something that sticks out to you.
In here,
Yeah.
probably the Grandfather of Guidon. I look at it every single time that I'm in the gallery, and it just reminds me about our most important technological advancement would be the birch bark canoe, because it fosters that relationship to the Holistic River, which is also located directly behind the gallery itself. And so water is inherent to who I am as a holistically person, a person of the beautiful, bountiful river. And so this piece of technology is just like that connector for me. And being in this space, it just reminds me where I'm located on my homeland.
That's incredible. What did you think of the Tom Thompson paintings they brought in? Have you had a chance to go through and look at them? And
Yeah, I've been really interested in Impressionist painting lately and landscape painting, and I feel like his style kind of blends the two of them together. Familiar with Tom Thompson, I'm really interested in his story. Working for 5 years in a tragic death, like I think that has been really interesting to kind of grapple with, and I love the show. It's a major exhibition. I don't know if I have a favorite, but it would probably be his flower works. There's a section of flower works, and I think those I gravitate towards because I love flower beadwork, and so I'm gravitating towards flowers
awesome.
in Tom Thompson.
Well, Emma, you had mentioned your grandmother earlier, and we've talked a little bit about it. Maybe tell the audience a little bit about your grandmother and the importance of her.
So my grandmother, my great-grandmother actually, Marjorie Purley, was the president of the Catholic Women's League in Tobic. But at one point she decided to leave her post and leave the church altogether and pull her children away from the church, because I think some of the mistreatment that they were dealing with during their time in Indian Day School in Tobic. And she started working for an organization here in Fredericton that was fighting for rights of Indigenous peoples of all kinds, land-based rights, culture-based rights, and so she started doing a lot of research. She obtained a Ford Foundation grant to build what was called Fort Maliseet in Tobic, and it was basically kind of like a ceremonial grounds, and she would bring in speakers and they would practice ceremony. She would learn and then teach people how to bead. She would take kids around to perform dance, and so that was happening in the early 70s.
Thank you guys for coming in and helping us out and giving us a little history lesson. I love, it's always great for the viewers to learn anything about art. And come down and see the show. It's going to be an incredible show.
Absolutely.
Okay, welcome back to McGowan's Canvas Miracles. We've been doing interviews at the gallery today and talking to people about some of the incredible art and the work that's going on. We have Ada here, who's how long have you been working with the Beaverbrook Gallery?
30 years this year.
30 years.
30 years.
And you're tired of it, right?
You can get tired
What
of...
a job.
Yeah. Get a dream job and then you get tired. No, no, I'm not tired. I am excited every single time there's a new exhibition. The excitement, the opportunities, the sense of possibilities in engagement, in storytelling, in experiences for people. That's what keeps us going.
It's incredible. I mean, every piece of art here has some story behind it. Everything from the oldest canoe, to the artwork that we talked about today. But there's a special collection that's here right now, the Tom Thompson collection. Maybe we could talk a little bit about the collection itself and some of the history of Tom Thompson.
What's really special about this group of works is it shows you the intimate, spontaneous sketches that Tom did over a period of about 5 years. And the range and the repertoire of brush strokes and colors and moments and weather, and you can just almost be there with him in the canoe in front of nothing but leaves or stumps or water or clouds. And the intimacy of the sketches is what creates a very different experience with this exhibition. And as you said, it is a once in a lifetime. I don't expect I will see a show like this in my lifetime. in Fredericton. And although there are finished larger paintings in this exhibition, quite a few, it's the sketches that are the stars of the show that, it's called North Star. So those immediate, easy moments that Tom Thompson was experiencing in Algonquin Park are there to take us on this little journey with Tom.
Yeah, it's incredible. And most Canadians would know that Tom Thompson was part of the group of 7, not originally, but it all sort of, they considered him part, I guess. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about that.
Right, well, maybe if he had lived past 1917 and into, say, 1920, when the group was formed, it would have been the group of 8. Possibly. I know the influences that Tom had for the group and that the group had for Tom. So it was a collaborative relationship, and I think Tom's death really solidified in these people that we call the group of 7 the desire to form the group and to express what they felt is Canadian matters, Canadian ideas, and a look at the Canadian landscape.
Tom's death itself, there's all kinds of controversy about it, and his. Tell me your idea of what you think happened.
Well, in Algonquin Park, which was 1917, and Tom Thompson was working feverishly. In 2 months, he made over 60 paintings. This was towards basically the end of his life. The fact that he, as an experienced canoeist, went out on a Sunday, clear day, good weather, and never returned, of course is going to be settled in Canadian history as a mystery that people are still looking to solve today. There were grave digging, there was, digging up Tom Thompson, reburying him in a different spot, putting a marker in the area where he died, his beloved Algonquin Park, but also research that people have done through letters and texts that Tom left, trying to find out what could have happened. And basically, I look at it as part of the story and a little bit of a mystery that we will never solve. And the fact that there was fishing line tied around his ankle multiple times, 17 times apparently. And the canoe was loaded for both fishing and art making. Meant to me that, okay, so he went out not with the intention of killing himself, but with the intention of having a sketching trip, right? And there are still today, I'm pretty sure, researchers and art historians and popular historians still writing and digging into archives to solve and to find out. And we'll still, this conversation will probably happen again 30 years from now, because I'm not convinced it will be solved. I go back to the sketches and try to think, would he have lost a few sketches in the process? Would he have had an accident? Would he have upset somebody enough that he basically was killed by one of his associates in Algonquin Park? All of those are possibilities, but meanwhile, what we have the sketches.
So the mystery creates an allure around the art, all great artists, they all seem to have some kind of thing that just sort of draws them in.
I go back to the sketches because in spite of a very short life and only 5 years of painting, the richness of expression and the love that comes out of this relationship he had with the land and with nature is what I'm left with from the show. I almost forget about the mystery. That gets left behind in a way, because the works are so real and easy to love.
Yeah, because he wasn't formally trained like other artists.
No.
He was just one of those working artists.
His work received the benefit of the support from members of the future Group of Seven, Carmichael and Lismer and McDonald. These are people he shared studios with, and people who traveled and trained in Europe. And Tom became like a sponge for the information and the knowledge that these artists could share with him. And you can almost see the influences from pretty much all of these collaborators in the sketches as you go along the show from 1912 until 1917.
The collection itself, getting it here, how long of a process is that?
Exhibitions that come from other institutions, which is this case, take a long time to put together because of the complications of art loans and the formalities that have to happen for art to be gathered from sometimes around the world to become an exhibition with a catalog. So that work is usually a 5-year process. Once it's all done and the exhibition starts touring to venues, it becomes available for institutions like us to book it, and we did. And we're very happy to see it here.
And is it laid out in the progression from old to new?
Yeah, the chronological layout is important because from 1912 to 1917, in those 5 years and 100 plus sketches that we have in the show, but thousands of sketches that he actually did, you get to see the evolution of a self-taught but really receptive artist. And there are artists, we usually get to give permission to artists who are willing to sketch in the space, but they can only use pencils or colored pencils. But even you could come in with a little sketchbook and sketch inside with Tom Thompson.
Wow, that's
yeah, as long as you only use pencils, are good.
That's incredible. There's other work coming as well. Maybe you could talk about some of the other pieces that are coming.
Right, so this exhibition set with Tom Thompson and Radical Stitch ends different times in March. Radical Stitch is here until March 2nd, just before March break camp, and Tom Thompson is here until March 23rd. It's hard to say goodbye to exhibitions, but it's our life. So we then wrap the shows, count, do the stats, how many people visited, and think about the reviews and the feedback for the shows, and then we move on to the next shows. And for us, the next shows this year are very exciting again. And the next show that's happening at this level, so on this floor here where Radical Stitches, is Sarah Maloney. And Sarah Maloney is an artist who's, for the past 30-some years, if not 40, has been working in a variety of media, but making really important points about the place of the artist, women artists practicing and working, basically a look at the body, our bodies, how it works, how we work, how we interact with the world around us. And the exhibition contains embroidery and beading and furniture and a new way to explore, in a way, ourselves and the world around us.
Well, we are here in the Beaverbrook Gallery. Tell us about the impact you think Beaverbrook himself had.
So Beaverbrook initial gift basically inspired continued gifts from art supporters and funders and community builders. So we have been very fortunate to have the support of the McCain family, and with Marianne McCain being an artist herself, but also supporting artists at all times in her life, and continuing, of course, the whole family
So the
pulled together.
McCains, they have a wing, or is a
So
how does that work?
it's a lot more, and a lot of other implications, like members of the McCain family left works to the gallery in memory of members of the family who passed on, which is a really good legacy gift to basically grow the collection and grow enrichment for the community. But after 1984, so the first gallery building project was 1983-84 with families from Montreal, the Flemmer and the Vaughan and the Hosmer and the Pillow families, who had summer homes in New Brunswick and St. Andrews, connected in different ways with Beaverbrook as well, and they decided it's time to build on to Beaverbrook's legacy. So they supported with funds the building of the international wing and huge gifts to the collection, more works of art, hundreds of works of art that got added to Beaverbrook's gift, and in time, another building of the Marion McCain Gallery to host Atlantic art exclusively. That was in 1994-95. The 2017 pavilion with, again, donations from the Curry family and the Irving family, and the newest addition, the Harrison McCain Pavilion, and another huge contribution that allows us to do not just exhibitions, but community programming. So the Harrison McCain Pavilion is there not to necessarily host art, but to serve as the community's living room and an opportunity for anybody and everybody, without having to pay admission, to come into the gallery, have a peek, have a drink at the cafe, meet with their friends, and maybe buy a membership to support what we do in the long run and build on the legacy that Beaverbrook left. Now, at some point, Beaverbrook made a comment about his hope for the gallery is that every single child walking here will receive an impulse to create and will be inspired to create. And to me, if a donor like Beaverbrook is able to say that in the 50s, and understand the importance of exposure and enrichment and growth for a community. As a boy who grew up in Miramichi, I'm sure he felt that for himself, and he absolutely wanted to make sure that affects thousands and thousands of people in the long run, and get it.
Well, he's definitely done that, and I want to thank you for all the great work you do, and for having us in, and we're going to come more and talk about this place, and hopefully get as many people loving art as much as we do. Thank you.
Thank you.